O'clock. We will, do I need to call them up before I call the meeting to order?
I would call them, just note when you come to roll call. Call them.
Okay, perfect. We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Do I need to do anything special to do that?
You've done it.
There we go. All right, we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Tara, do you mind to do the roll call?
Sure.
And then we'll also invite up our alternates. Both of them? Yes, please.
All right. Bars,
Here.
Brown,
Here.
Buckley, not here. Coyne,
Here.
Luce,
Here.
and Presnell.
Here.
All right, we have a quorum.
Thank you, thank you. We will look to approval of agenda. Does anyone want to make a motion to approve this week's agenda?
Make a motion to approve this week's agenda.
Support.
It is so moved. The agenda is approved.
You do need to vote on it.
Oh, that's right.
But you
All
also
in
need-
favor?
You also need to decide who got the second, so that Tara can report.
Oh, we'll take Rick Bars on the second, Jeff Brown on the motion. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Anyone not in favor? So moved. All right, it looks like we have correspondence and board reports. I think it's just those expiration dates. I don't know that there's anything really to note there.
Yep.
All right, next up, we've got the approval of the minutes from our March 1, 2023 regular ZBA meeting. Does anyone want to make a motion to approve the minutes from our...
I'll make a motion.
Dave Coyne motions to
Second.
approve. And we've got, remind me your first name, Eric Luce. I knew the last name. With the second, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. Minutes are approved. All right, we'll move into the public comment section. Agenda item. This is restricted to 3 minutes, and it is regarding things not on the agenda tonight. So we'll go ahead and open up public comment at 7:03.
And Liz, I want you to know that we have the Zoom up, but I have nobody on there for
Okay.
public comment.
Perfect. All right. Well, it looks like we can go ahead and close public comment at 7:03. On to new business. We have a PVAR 23. I'm sure there's another way I should reference that. 01 request from James Recker for an 8-inch height variance from the requirements of section 7.5.C.3 of the zoning ordinance to allow an existing accessory building built without a permit and located at 5401 South Lincoln Road on parcel 14-033-30-005-00 in the southwest quarter of section 33 and in the agricultural zoning district to remain in place with modifications by the owner to reduce the total floor area by 300 square feet. So we'll start off with any updates from the staff, and then we can hear from the applicant as well.
Thank you very much. Everybody should have a copy of our report, which was dated April 24th. In addition to our report, there's a good bit of information there, some pictures and of course, information from the applicant. I'll just have a couple of notes in terms of the structure of the report. Where you see the various standards for review, these are taken out of the Zoning Board of Appeals sections. The standards are in the black boxes. That's the standard straight out of the ordinance. Under each of those standards, we have just some staff comments that relate to the proposed application. and the issues that are required to bring before you. Just a couple notes. This is coming to a part because of ordinance enforcement action. The township did receive a building permit application in 2021 for this building. At the time, it was denied. On the page 20 of the packet, page 2 of our report, down at the bottom, under the not self-created standard, we talked a little bit about this. There was a problem with the original application in 2021. It could not be approved. The applicant subsequently constructed the building without a permit. That was identified in 2022. That ultimately led them to apply for an after-the-fact building permit. And in reviewing that and working with the applicant, and they've been very cooperative through this process. I want to make sure to note that. It's taken an extended period of time to get us to this, but they've been wonderful to work with. And trying to resolve these problems.
Yeah.
Anyway, in 2022, it was identified by staff that the building was simply too large. It could not be approved because of both a height issue and a total floor area issue. It exceeded our requirements on both of those counts. The applicant noted that problem and taken ownership of it. And as noted in the introduction, they have proposed to remove 300 square feet of the building to eliminate the variance related to total floor area. So that left us, and that's a significant difference. That really was a very serious issue, being that far over the numbers on the floor area. So that issue has been eliminated, or would be eliminated, if the other variance is approved. So the other variance is a height variance. As noted in the introduction, it's 8 inches too tall. The applicant asked about doing some fill essentially to eliminate the height issue by simply raising the grade level, but unfortunately there's no way to be able to do that without impacting neighboring properties, and so that's what brings it to your attention. In addition to our report, we did provide a set of draft motion templates. I would encourage you to use those and add to them as you see fit, but it's helpful for our recording secretary if you can use the formats that are there. And there's motions for each of the potential actions you can take tonight. Under each one, there's some language there about adding reasons for your variance, and I do always recommend that whether you approve or deny or approve with conditions a variance request, that you always state the reasons why you're taking that action. Some of that information could be taken from our report or the applicant's materials, or as I said, other things you identify. So with that, I'm happy to answer questions as we go along.
Thank you, Rodney. And now we can hear from the applicant if you guys would like to speak. I believe, is there a time restriction on it? It's not noted here. Okay. You're good? Okay. All right, that goes into questions from the board members. If everyone has had time to kind of review, does anybody have any questions about the information in the packet, anything that we've read through? I know we've got some of our alternates here, so I'll give you guys a little bit of a chance to catch up.
The 300 square feet, you say, has already been resolved, taken off?
Well, if they have proposed to remove those 300 square feet as part of whatever happens with this project. If a variance is not approved, they would be required to remove the entire building, but because it's too tall, and there's no feasible method to reduce that height. But if a variance were to be approved, they have proposed to remove the 300 square feet as part of that. So, and that's why in each of the motions and in the notice and all that, it references that. So
Yeah.
that's addressed.
Rick?
Yeah, looking at the ordinance, it appears the reason it's reduced, there's a maximum of 1,500 square feet because it's less than 2.5 acres.
That's
And
correct.
the reason. Okay, and then the height requirement is 14 feet, so I just want to verify that. If they have between 2.5 and 10 acres, it'd be okay.
That
They
that
don't-
is correct.
And so, okay, and it's zoned ag.
Are there any other questions? We can move into deliberation. If not,
Liz, I think you have to open the public
Yeah.
hearing.
oh, I skipped that part. We'll open it up at 7:10 for a public hearing with regard to this issue. All right, I think we can close public hearing at 7:10.
I would just add to the note that, just note that there were no public present.
No public present. Thanks, Rodney. All right. One day. All right, we can move into the Board of Appeals deliberation and action. I always think it's helpful to use our standards for review for that. If everybody has, it's at the back of your packet from this week. As the variance report there. So essentially, a variance shall not be granted unless all of the following standards are met. There are 8 criteria for granting a variance. I always think it's just helpful to review those as we're thinking about the next step and the motion to follow. The first one is practical difficulties. Strict compliance with the specified dimensional standard will deprive the applicant of rights commonly enjoyed by other property owners in the same zoning district, create an unnecessary burden on the applicant, or unreasonably prevent the owner from using the property for a permitted purpose. So, I think given that the entire structure would have to be removed, if we don't grant the variance, that seems like an unnecessary burden on the applicant to me, but does anybody have any other thoughts there?
Talk about the, enjoyed by the property owners in the same zoning district. I drove by there, and across the road is a farm, similar to Mr. Becker's, and they have buildings almost the same size, maybe not quite as high. So I don't think anyone here, as the neighbors, has any complaints that I know of.
Yeah.
But I just look at that as, it fits, even though it doesn't meet the requirements. It fits in the neighborhood.
Yeah. That makes sense. Any other thoughts there? B, substantial justice. The variance will give substantial relief and justice to the applicant, consistent with justice to other property owners in the same district. I think to your point, Rick, it doesn't take away from anybody else within the same zoning district as far as visual or anything like that. They wouldn't end up with more storage room, as it's kind of noted here. So I think we could check that one as well with that detail. C, unique circumstances. The need for the variance is due to unique circumstances peculiar to the land or structures involved that are not applicable to other land or structures in the same district. The note here, it is possible to have an accessory building that meets the requirements. However, it's already been built, and there really isn't a way to reduce the height. So, perhaps the willingness to reduce the square footage would minimize the violation, I guess, as it were. So I guess you could consider that a unique circumstance, that it's already there, and obviously the burden to remove it would be substantial.
I think that that they're willing to get rid of the 300 think we could offset that. And, you know, I've read all of it here, and, you know, not making excuses, but COVID threw a curve at everybody. The supply chain, ordering stuff up, I've ordered a lot of things, and we just, you can't get them.
Yeah.
And the price already went up on it. He didn't have a building permit, but I'm just kinda, there's a lot of confusion, and COVID did a lot of things in.
I think you're right, absolutely. Preservation of property rights, the variance is necessary for the preservation and enjoyment of a substantial property right possessed by other property owners in the zoning district. I think we've kind of touched on that. Other owners in the district have these detached accessory buildings. And even though there is some additional height, it's not impacting the storage capacity in a way that would take away from others. Public safety and welfare, the requested variance can be granted in such a fashion that the spirit of this ordinance will be observed and public safety and welfare secured. I think we can check all those boxes. It doesn't increase the hazard of fire or endanger public safety. It doesn't unreasonably diminish or impair the value of surrounding properties. Granting of a variance will not alter the essential character of the area or surrounding properties, and the granting of a variance will not impair the adequate supply of light and air to any adjacent properties. So, not self-created, the problem and resulting need for the variance has not been self-created by the applicant or the applicant's predecessors. That one's probably perhaps the trickiest. However, I think given all the things we've talked about here with COVID and some of those other issues, you could certainly make a case that it was not an intentional self-created problem.
I was just curious, was denied due to the location of the building not being on the applicant's property? I
was wondering about that too.
maybe.
Peter, can you speak to that?
So when the first application for the building permit came in, the location was on the neighboring property, and so that had to be modified, a new application showing that the building actually was on the property of the person applying.
Okay, it was gonna be on Jason.
Excuse me, when was the first application?
So that would have been in 2021.
There, okay, there was no other, in 2019, 2020, there was no application?
I think that was referenced in the material from,
Yes,
Yeah.
that's what I'm referencing.
yeah.
Right,
I just wanted to check to see if there was or not.
there was not any formal application done in 2020. 2019 is before I came about, but there was not a formal application done in 2020. My understanding is that there were some efforts, inquiries, some of which may have taken place during our COVID shutdown periods.
Gotcha,
so-
that's where COVID's, okay,
Yeah,
all
we-
right,
we
all
didn't-
right.
We didn't address the
where
applicant's
I'm
comments
okay.
because they weren't really necessary to address when we did.
Wasn't one address
Gotcha.
across the street? One was 04 and one was 01, the address?
Have a mailer, notice,
Was,
Mr. Records stated.
yeah, it was just a miscommunication on the address. I
Yeah,
don't think it was,
Unintentional.
I don't think it was intentional. I mean, I'm just saying that, but you know how addresses are.
Yeah, this-
Yeah. But in terms of this process, it began in 2021.
2021,
Yeah.
okay, thank you,
The
thank
other
you for
part-
this
The
good.
question I had on that is, Robert, for Peter, is denied to the location, but it was not denied based on the height or the size. It didn't state that in here.
No, once the application was modified, it was denied based on the size and the height of the building.
The most current one.
The most current
I was
one.
thinking of the one in 2021 that was denied because it was on somebody else's property. I didn't say anything about whether
I don't,
it addressed the size or the height.
I,
So-
I don't believe that application ever even got to the point of having that conversation.
All right, okay. Thank you. All right.
G, more than a mere inconvenience, the alleged hardship and practical difficulties that will result from a failure to grant the variance include substantially more than mere inconvenience or an inability to attain a higher financial return. As we've noted, there's no way to modify it without removing the whole of the structure, which could then cause some additional zoning issues of adding a fill around the structure. So I think that is pretty well suited as more than a mere inconvenience. Minimum necessary action, the reasons set forth in the application justify the granting of the variance, and the variance is the minimum necessary relief to allow reasonable use of the land, building, or structure. The granting of a lesser variance will not give substantial relief and justice to the applicant, consistent with justice to other property owners in the same district. This goes back to the applicant has proposed making some of the modifications on the size, removing 300 square feet to the maximum allowed floor area, which significantly minimizes the scope and number of variances needed to allow part of the structure to remain. And really, there are no changes that they could make height-wise to comply. So that feels like granting the variance could be the minimum necessary action on the height requirement. There's our 8 criteria. Would any questions, or would anybody like to put forth a motion either to approve, deny, postpone action, or approve with conditions?
I'd just like to mention that I think it meets all the criteria for what we're looking for. And then I assume with the proposed, the motions, the one would, if it was approved with conditions, the condition would be that they remove the 300 feet. Is that the correct one?
Well, actually, even the motion to approve, in the text of that motion, it references that the owner, it says, the end of it says that the structure will remain in place with modifications by the owner to reduce the floor area by 300 square feet. So it's actually part of the motion. You don't need to set that as a condition.
Okay, all right. Then I'd like to make a motion to approve the request. Does it have to be read, or is that?
Well, yes, I recommend it be read, so because that way it's in the minutes that it was actually read into the record.
Do you need the support before you need it read, or do you just
No,
need it read?
you would read it and then somebody
Okay,
would
I can
support
make a
it.
motion to approve the PVAR 2301 request for 8-inch height variance from the requirements of section 75C3 of the zoning ordinance to allow existing accessory building built without a permit and located 5401 South Lincoln Road on parcel 14-033-30-005-00 in the southwest quarter of section 33 and in the AG, Agriculture Zoning District, remain in place with modifications by the owner to reduce the total floor area by 300 square feet, finding that the variance is consistent with the standards review in section 14.4 K point 1 of the zoning ordinance for the following reasons.
Support.
That it meets all 8 of the required,
Well,
Criteria.
that's
Yep.
in the motion. It's just, is there anything specific you'd like to include? I mean, for example, you mentioned, and I know this is one of the standards, but it may be worth saying that you recognize that this is the minimum necessary action based on the applicant's proposal to remove the 300 square feet. You also have you mentioned the recognizing it's not self-created, recognizing potential challenges related to COVID at the time could have created confusion, I think was what you said,
Right.
Dave. Those could be a couple of specifics that might flesh out the reason why.
Do you have those, Tara?
Yeah, I do.
And we've got a second from Jeff Brown. All in favor of approving the motion? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? None opposed. And so it is moved.
I have a question. Is there a date that it has to be removed by? Is there like a deadline that has to be put on it, or?
So for the board members, also for our applicant, what will happen with this is this variance allows the township to issue the building permit that for the project with the modifications. So what will happen is they'll basically the applicant will provide details of how they're going to modify it. That will be reviewed by the building official, and then they'll be able to issue the building permit. The actions will need to be taken in accordance with the time frame of the building permit, which is 180 days.
All right. Any other business? We don't have our other business person who usually gives us updates from the planning commission here. But if there is any other business, now would be the time. No other business noted. We do have extended public comment restricted to 5 minutes regarding any issue. We will open up that public comment at 7:26. There is no additional public present. We will close the additional public comment at 7:26. Any final board comments? No additional final board comments. That means we are at the adjournment. And I don't know if there's something official I will do, but
Declare the meeting adjourned.
do what?
You just declare the meeting adjourned?
Meeting adjourned. Y'all have a good night.
Thank you.